Hello. So today we're looking at something from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, and we're pulling it all out of the Player's Handbook. This is the reprint. And today we're discussing a very special class. On this page you'll see Multiclassed on Bard. So what I'm going to attempt to explain are bards. This might get a bit choppy as I'm just trying to flick through various pages, but let's see if we can explain how it all works. So the bards are a special class. So bards are an amalgam of two other classes, and as part of their training they end up working with a third class, which I'll explain as best as I can a little bit later. But let's start from the top. The Bard is a very special character and can only be in your adventure or campaign if the DM allows it. That is the key. The key is whether or not the DM allows it, because the Bard breaks a couple of general rules for characters and character classes. So they don't take anything over the top, but there's just some additional paperwork required for both the player and the DM. This class particularly works well when the DM has a structured way of doing leveling up with training and building up the background of personalities and getting the characters to be involved in their own upbringing as they progress, the level progression and that sort of thing. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. At some point the character says, I want to be a bard. Take a couple aspirins, sit down, figure it out, and then get back into it. So the character is a bard, but it's more of a bard in training to begin with. So you still are limited by the requirements of the bard, which, as it says, is the 15 or better in strength, wisdom, dexterity, and charisma, and at least 12 in intelligence and 10 in constitution. So everything's on the table in terms of requirements, which is different from others. So it's not an easy class to be, but it's the sort of scores that they're suggesting here aren't exceptional, but they're better than average, and better than average for an adventurer, and that means that they're very much more a well-rounded, multi-purpose type character, which is true, they are. And the race, as it says, and we all know, humans and half-elves, which plays into the characteristics of the bard, how they travel and wander around from place to place and sing songs and so on. And you might be thinking, oh no, do I have to sing songs? Yes you do. And people want to hear your poetry, believe me. Alright, so just going through some of these first. This is all later, really. Once you become a fully fledged bard. But these are the weapons that you will be needing to be proficient with. So when you start up saying, right, I want to be a bard, the first class your character becomes is a fighter. So you run through the fighter charts and do all the fighter bits until minimum of 5th level, but not before 8th. Now remember, you've stated as the player that you're going to be a bard, you need to be in charge of that. So this is where the economy of experience points comes in. And I'm just going to do a quick flick over to the fighter. So bear with me. So here we are at the fighter. So at 5th level, the fighter has 18,000 experience points, and then at 35,000 moves up to 6th and so on. So the question is, which level before moving across? Now, if the fighter is progressing roughly at the same rate as the others, which is almost about right. The other classes will be almost of an equal value. The fighter will have 18,000 experience points, everyone else will have 18,000 experience points, and that puts everybody roughly around the level 4 or level 5 category. So one of the fears of being a bard is that you're being left behind because you have to revert to 0 in your next class and then move on. So this is where the progression comes through in how the DM handles it. The DM needs to be able to provide the facility for the bard character to be able to move from fighter to thief. The introduction of a thieves guild that's willing to train them, a player character thief potentially, but generally it's a thieves guild of some sort. They become a bit of a jack of all trades, so they've between 18,000 experience points and up to 250 because they can go up to level 8. Then we flick it over to the thief, and again we're looking at 5th level or so. Now if you look at the thief, to get to 5th level for the thief requires 10,000 experience points. And this is where the experience points model starts to get a bit funky. So over at the fighter end, even if you think, oh, I'm going to stick to being 6th level, well, if you hit 18,000, you're having to get 17,000 experience points to get to 6th level. Those 17,000 experience points get you squarely in 5th, and in that same time that you go up 1 level and you'd get the 5 levels required for the thief. So you don't get any extra hit points until you surpass the fighter. So if you choose a 5th level thief, a 5th level fighter, sorry, and you move to 6th level thief, you get that extra d6. So collecting 20,000, and then you can move on to being the bard. And you become a bard by going to what's called a college, which is a formal institution of learning how to sing and dance and recite poetry. And it would appear that many druids make their money by moonlighting as teachers at these colleges. But we're about to get into that in a few moments. So let me flick back to the bard. So here we are back at the bard. And so once the bard has moved from the thief and gone to college, this is where we're at. The bard starts again at 0 and works their way up. So the big question / fear, threat, is if the bard begins at 0, how many experience points does everyone else have by comparison, and so on. If the fighter level was at 5th, that's about 18,000, then the thief goes to about 6th, which is 20,000. The total of 38,000 experience points for everyone else in all the other character classes puts them in that 5th or 6th level anyway, which keeps them all relatively the same, because ultimately the bard character would be a 5th level fighter, a 6th level thief, and heading over to being a 1st level bard. So once at the bard, in that 1st level, obviously 0 extra hit points, and then so on after that. Those extra experience points, they don't make a lot of difference, as everyone else is getting to 9th level. Suddenly they're needing hundreds of thousands of experience points, whereas the bard at that point will be still in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, will still be in the tens of thousands. And the progression of the bard levels will increase, because ultimately the bard will still get a part of the general share of everything else. And as they all increase and get 100,000 experience points, so too with the bard, and the bard will progress 3 or 4 levels, pop, pop, pop. So at 5th level fighter, 5d10 plus any con bonuses, if any. Then at 6th level thief, 1d6 extra. That's 38,000 experience points. Then after 2,000 experience points, you gain an extra D6, and so on. So the interesting thing about the Bard, which is, there's a number of interesting things, but this is one of them, is that they are druids by trade as well. They learn how to do things as a druid. So the druids come to the college, they teach them the ways and the means of living, and the Bard learns the spells, the druid spells. So the overall question is, what is it that makes a Bard useful, interesting, and so on? And obviously, besides the fact that it's become a 6th level thief and a 5th level fighter, so it has all the abilities of the fighter and the thief, and has saving throws as per a druid, so in the clerical, so you're looking at being able to cherry pick between a fighter, thief, and cleric for the saving throws. Spell casting. You're always fighting as if you were the 5th level fighter. So the fighter element doesn't increase. You're not increasing in your 2 hit charts. It's always as that 5th level fighter. That is probably the largest drawback. That, and you get to recite poetry. And once you become a Bard, fully fledged Bard, that's when you need to abandon leather, or abandon your armor to wearing leather, or only magical chainmail. There's your duality of being, leather or magical chainmail. No shields, and the usual druidic bits and pieces, some swords. And this is where they get some extra abilities. So they actually have the ability to charm. So as they communicate with another creature, they get to charm, a percentage chance of charming them, which allows you to put a suggestion as the spell into the minds of your opponent. They also have this legends and lore knowledge percentage, which allows them to understand history, local regions, any magical items, identify special items, and know what relics are laying around. So they can become quite useful. The most interesting thing, which I think probably goes past many of the others, is they have their poetry, which they recite for 2 rounds, two full combat rounds of reciting poetry. And it can spur everybody on to gaining a bonus to hit for the next 10 rounds. A ferocity from the poetry. And of course the morale can improve as well. So the Bard can just begin singing and dancing in the middle of a battle. They can still engage in battle, they can still fight, they just can't cast spells while they're singing or reciting poetry. And it's all creatures within a certain range. There you go. And they're charming. They're very charming. They are allowed to have henchmen, but only once they've reached a few levels up. At 5th level, the Bard in effect becomes a duet. They get to hang out with humans, half-elves or elves only, fighters, thieves or druids. These are their henchmen capabilities. So I suppose it's more of a case of they become a duet at 5th level, they become a trio at 8th, they become a quartet at 11th, then they become a band at 14th, at 17th they become more like a 70s rock band with 6 people in it in total. But then once they become 23rd, once they hit that magical 23rd level, they get to bring an orchestra with them. They can have as many henchmen as they want. There is no limit to the number of henchmen. How cool is that? I'm going to have a symphony accompany me everywhere I go. So they get a little bit of spells, they get a little bit of fighty, they get a little bit of sneaky, they get around. So the other benefit of being a bard is that generally the rule of law back in the Middle Ages and in medieval times was that a bard had to sing for its supper but not be refused entry into any castle, and for the most part as a guest could not be harmed, which opens it up to a lot of shenanigans from the player's part. So for the DM, the caveat is really human and half-elf, and whilst you're not dual classing or multi-classing, you are definitely picking up 2 different classes along the way, even a third one really, with the druid spells and saving throws. So here we go with the bard. Takes a little bit of effort and discipline for the player, but as long as you do it right, you too could be Will Scarlet, one of the compatriots of Robin Hood, who used to sing songs and tell tales and go in before to tell them how much everyone was in trouble with Robin Hood if they didn't do what he wanted them to do. But yes, this is the bard. And at obviously higher levels, your charm percentage seriously increases, and your ability to know stuff. Yeah, I just know that. As well as having the 6th level thieving abilities adjusted by dexterity, and the 5th level fighting abilities, and all that entails. So which also includes the multiple attacks against creatures under 1 hit dice, etc. So today is the bard. It's their chance to shine, sing us a song, and hopefully, if the DMs don't get too scared of it, because as I say, it's not so much that they break, but they bend. They bend a few rules. They don't really break the system, and they don't cause any problems. They just bend. And it does encourage the players to wax lyrically. Alright, so hopefully we'll see a few more bards out there. And the other final caveat for the bard, yes, you must always be in possession of a stringed instrument. How about that? Always. Alright, well, thank you very much. And we'll catch you around. Thank you.